So I set out to make myself a wooden joinery mallet. And I found these plans on the internet, bought them, downloaded them, cut it out on my CNC machine, glued it together, and it only took me a minute to realize I don't like it. It's just too big. The head's too big, it's heavy, not to mention it wasn't the easiest thing to put together. This thing is actually 8 separate parts when you count them all individually. So I set out to make my own. So I sat down and drew out something much simpler. It's only got 3 parts to it. Head is a bit smaller, a little lighter, and a bit more aesthetically pleasing. And while I was at it, making myself one, I'm going to make a few more for some friends of mine. And I also wanted to share it with you as a thank you for watching my channel and supporting me. So there's a link down in the comments for you to download the VCarve file. And if you don't have VCarve, then the SVG will be there for you to create your own tool paths on whatever CAM software that you use. I decided to make my mallet out of the same wood I made the other mallet is. I'm going to make the handle out of maple and then the sides of the mallet head out of black walnut. Here I'm cutting out the dowel holes that will be in the head of each mallet. And then once that was complete, I just run a profile tool path to cut out the handles. The sides of the mallet head I'll cut out of this black walnut. And first thing I'll do is I'll surface it down each side, getting it nice and flat, and get it down to the thickness that I want and need, which is about 1 inch. Now I'll end up doing a double-sided cut on this panel on each side of the mallet head. And everybody's workflow is different. I could have done the double-sided option in VCarve, but I'll just create 2 standard tool paths and cut one side at a time. But before I'll do that, I'll run a profile pass around the edge of the panel to get it down to spec, which should be 6 inches wide by 32 inches long. And yeah, I could have done it on the table saw, but there's just no better way than to get something dead on accurate by letting the CNC do it. So I'll use double-sided tape to secure it down to the wasteboard and then put it up against the fence so I know it's 90 degrees to everything. And then I will actually zero from the wasteboard to do my profile pass. That way I know I'll get it exactly to the depth that I need it to without cutting into my wasteboard. Now, I've mentioned this in other videos. I don't always use the probing block, but in operations where repeatability is critical, I'll use the probing block, and I don't use a bit because the flutes in the bit will actually make your measurement inaccurate. So I use this round piece of 1/4-inch stock, perfectly round, flat on the bottom. That way my Z is consistent, especially in this situation when I'll flip it over. Now, add a little flair to this hammer. I thought it would be cool to personalize it a little bit and add the initials for the folks that I'm making these for. So this is just a standard V-carve with a 90-degree V-bit. Something else I wanted to add to it was put a contour on the sides of the mallet head, and I did a molding toolpath with this. But after that started, I realized something wasn't right. It was terribly off-center, if you can see here, and I was not happy about it.
You're off-center bigger than shit.
After a little investigating, I realized that when I probed it, I had left a 1/4-inch offset on my probe settings when they should have been 0. And it was on the Y. So I reset everything, put everything at 0, reprobed, got it all back like it should be, and gave it another shot. But now I had to contend with the fact that I had, well, a big mistake on one side, so I just opted to turn the wood over and do the carving and the contours on the opposite side of the wood. When I cut out the dowels on the opposite side, that'll kind of hide my mistake. Don't tell nobody. Now that's more like it. Had to sand off all the fuzzy, so when I flipped the board over, it'd sit nice and flat. Now, once I do the profile passes on each of the heads, there won't be a whole lot left of the panel to secure to the wasteboard. So just for added insurance, I threw a piece of double-sided tape down, just kind of hold it in place so nothing would let go on me while I was doing the profile passes. Man, there ain't nothing to make your troubles go away like a 1/2-inch end mill. Now, the remnants of those V-carves will still be in the dowels, but nobody will ever know if you don't tell them. I did this pocketing tool path, and I took it down just shy of 1/2 inch. The whole thickness of the panel was 1 inch. So this will leave the heads to be right at a 1/2 inch thick, and it'll leave the dowels to be just under a 1/2 inch thick. So that way, when I put them in the 1 inch handle, there's enough space in between them where they meet in the middle of the dowel hole that they won't conflict with each other, and allow a little room for glue as well. And that is how you do that. I used a round over bit to go over the edges of the handles and round those off. Make them comfortable when you're holding it. I put one of these together off camera, and when I was gluing everything up, having the glue down in the dowel hole and I had a pretty decent tolerance on the dowel pins that it kind of created a hydra effect and was difficult to get the heads in. So I just kind of took off a little bit of the dowels to allow the glue to escape when I pressed them in together. And then I clamped them together and allowed them to dry overnight. I knocked most of the rough edges down with just 120 grit on the orbital sander and then finished up by hand with 220 grit. Now, in other videos, I've professed my love for Rubios. Man, this stuff is awesome. I love it. I may even pour it over French fries. They're so good. And Rubios, if you're watching, I would not deny you the opportunity for a sponsorship. Just saying. Here's a little pro tip. If you get any kind of sealant, oil or whatever in little crevices like this, once you get it saturated, blow it out with some compressed air and wipe off the excess, and voila. And there you have it, my take on a joinery mallet. I've used it a few times since I've made it, and I ain't lying, I love it. I'm pretty proud of it. As always, thank you for watching, and the merriest and happiest of Christmases to you and yours. Take care.